Welcome to the Emotional Eating Unwrapped podcast. I'm your host, Alana Kessler, an emotional eating and weight loss coach for women looking to fall in love with eating, create healthy attachments with food, and lose weight sustainably. Hello, and welcome to another new episode of Emotional Eating Unwrapped. I'm your host, Alana Kessler, and I want to start today with something important. Important because what we're talking about today is something that I personally have never had lived experience with. We're talking about the shifting identity of motherhood. And I think, as many of you know who've been listening to this podcast for a while, I decided at a pretty young age that I did not want to have my own children. And I am very blessed that I met a man and we got married. We share the same values around that. And we offer our love and care and just the way that we like to provide in the world in a lot of different other ways. And it's important that I share that because though I've never had a child myself, I'm going to be talking about this topic that I do feel I have a lot of expertise in, and especially in the angle that we're going to be talking about today. And I want to share that because even though I do feel I have a lot of, um, knowledge by association and having supported and walked alongside and listened to so many women who are mothers of babies, I want to approach this conversation with you today with respect, with humility, and with honesty, knowing that though I have so much associated experience, like I said, I've never myself had that experience. And I do think that, and I know this firsthand, that lived experience is so different from, associated experience. But I still feel like this conversation needs to be had. And my perspective of it, I think, is going to be really impactful and really important because though I may not know the lived experience of midnight feedings in my own body, or the way that the world completely just turns on its head overnight when you bring a baby home, I do know the look in a woman's eyes when she tells me that she feels like a stranger in her own skin. I know the shake in a woman's voice when she courageously says out loud, I feel like I should be like happier than this. And I know that there's a grief, whether or not it's named or unnamed, but a heaviness that so many mothers carry, but rarely speak out loud. So one of the themes that is the most prevalent theme has to do with the body, right? The physical body, and how quickly the world seems to pivot from celebrating what your body just did, this amazing experience of childbirth, this amazing human nature miracle that the female body is able to do, that we pivot so quickly from that to asking how fast you're going to erase the evidence of that whole thing, that whole experience. The pressure to bounce back is not subtle. It's everywhere. It's in family comments. It's in Instagram comparisons. It's even in the silence in a room when somebody completely avoids mentioning your postpartum body at all. And for many women, that silence can feel like invisibility. And the shame and disappointment and self-consciousness and insecurity that starts to come when your body doesn't conform to these expectations, it doesn't just sit in your mind. What ends up happening is that it lives in your nervous system. It lives in your chest. It lives in your stomach. It lives in your body sensations. And so often, food becomes the place to soften these edgy feelings. And we don't often, of course, Many new moms often are hungrier than usual because we need more nutrition for breastfeeding and for healing and all these different things. But oftentimes we're not eating for that reason. We're not eating because we're hungry or, any kind of physiological reason. It's really because eating feels like a small, immediate comfort when the world outside so relentless, feels so relentless. And the changes the changes that happen when a woman transitions into motherhood that I see so often, and I've seen time and time again, is that the changes aren't just physical changes. It's not just about the physical body. Every woman I've spoken to tells me that there's a deeper shift. And it's one that's harder to name. And that shift is the change in identity. Because motherhood, I've seen it, right? I have 2 sisters-in-laws, I have 8 nieces and nephews, and motherhood is full of joy, right? I know this firsthand because I see it. But it's also full of grief. And I think we do women a disservice when we don't name both truths at the same time. Because there is grief of missing freedom, of missing selfishness in some capacity, of missing the body you once recognized, of missing the version of yourself who wasn't always on call. I once listened to a client describe to me that she once, after grocery shopping, just sat in her car for like 30 minutes because she didn't want to go home. Because those minutes in the car was the only time that she felt like herself again. And that struck me so deeply because it was a moment of mourning and survival at the same time, right? All at once. And this feeling of grief and these actions, it doesn't mean that you love your child less. It just means that you're human. It means that you're truly, truly moving through one of the biggest transformations of your life. And there's another layer that comes up often in these conversations, and that layer is about intimacy. So many women have told me, I don't even feel like I know this body anymore. How can I feel comfortable being touched? And yet at the same time, they describe feeling touched constantly by a baby, by a child who needs them endlessly. And so it's such a paradox being overtouched, but underconnected in an adult, mature way. Right? So losing connection to your own sensuality, to your own expression, while being consumed by the physical demands of motherhood. Right? And a lot of those physical demands are actually physical touch. And so sometimes eating and food becomes the only reliable place of comfort because it doesn't ask anything of you, but you get to feel some sensual sensations without feeling like, without feeling like you need to give back anything or something is being taken. So if we think about some of the things we've just talked about, so if the pressure, the grief, and the intimacy shifts are all real, and they are, how do we begin moving towards healing? Right? How do we begin moving towards, recalibrating back to ourselves? And so every story that I've witnessed points back to this. Healing begins with compassion and not the performative, positive affirmation where you say, I love myself through gritted teeth, right? Like we're not going to just say affirmations and hope that that it changes our state of being, right? We're not going to be performative, but the compassion that's the deep, quiet kind that acknowledges, of course, this is hard. Of course, you miss your old self. Of course, your body looks different. It just performed a miracle, right? Like acknowledging and giving validity and giving truth and airtime to the true experience, and acknowledging that it is amazing and it is a miracle. And at the same time, there's heaviness and there's heavy energy around there. And that's okay. Both things could be acknowledged at the same time. And so once you acknowledge that, reconnecting to yourself looks different for every woman. For one, it might be buying clothes that honor the body she has now. For another, it's asking for 20 minutes of solitude from her support system and protecting it like sacred ground. I feel like that's sometimes the hardest one, but sometimes ends up being the most transformative. And for another, it's practicing gratitude for what her body can do today, even if it's not what it once did before. And often it's permission to say, I'm grieving, permission to say, I feel lost, and permission to let the messiness of all of this, like I said before, the heaviness of all of this, coexist with the beautiful. And then there's the nervous system, right? So as we move through all the different layers of the shift, there's the nervous system piece, because postpartum isn't just physical recovery. We know this. It's not just physical recovery, it's constant vigilance, right? Hormone shift, sleep deprivation takes over, and your body is completely wired to be on, right? You are now a protector. You are now in masculine energy, actually, right? Pregnancy is very feminine energy. It's very feminine, energetic. You're holding, you're creating. And masculine energy, now you're in it where you're like on, you're doing, you are providing. And when you're in that state 24/7, right? Because even when you're not physically doing it, your brain is now in a masculine state. It's constantly managing, thinking ahead, planning, anticipating. And so when you're in that state, your brain craves quick relief. Your brain, your body. That's why sugar, bread, comfort food, it feels magnetic. Because it's your body's way of saying, oh my God, please just let me exhale, let me rest, let me relax back into my feminine. But what I've learned and what I encourage women to experiment with is finding small, accessible ways to regulate beyond food and to find their feminine energy and source their feminine energy, because feminine energy can be sourced and resourced, right? It's something that's actually like constantly there. We just have to pull it out. And so ways to do it is connecting, right? Connecting with your body, with yourself, feeling anchored and connected. And that could be like 5 minutes outside with your feet in the grass. That could be a slow, deep breath, something to slow down, hand over your heart, reminding yourself you're safe, you're allowed to soften. Right? So it's really important that you start to reclaim and rebuild that feminine energy and that feminine essence through slowing down, through reconnection, through compassion, through expanding your capacity to hold the difficult emotions and also the beautiful experience. So before we close, I just want to end by saying, if you're in this season and you feel unseen or overwhelmed or even guilty for not loving every moment, right? Every moment of the fourth trimester, I just want to say, I see you. Okay, I truly see you. That even though I haven't walked this path in my own body, I truly honor the magnitude of what you've been carrying, of what you are carrying, or of what you're going to be carrying. And there's nothing broken about you if you're feeling this shift. You're not failing, you're just becoming. You're becoming, you're evolving, you're unfolding. And the path forward, it is not about bouncing back, right? It's about moving forward with compassion, with patience, and with the knowing that your worth, it was never tied to how quickly you can erase the evidence of the life you just created. Okay? So, thank you so much for listening to this episode today. Thank you so much for listening to all the episodes of our podcast every week. We love you guys. Thank you so much for liking us and subscribing on YouTube. Thank you so much for liking and subscribing to us on Apple and Spotify. And please, if you haven't yet, if you're interested in a free one-on-one session with me, we're doing monthly giveaways where every month I am giving away one free one-on-one session to a listener who leaves us a review, a lovely review, takes a screenshot of it and sends it to us on Instagram, either on Instagram at BeWellByAK, or you can send it to podcast@BeWellByAK.com. And until next time, I'm Alana, and thank you for listening to Emotional Eating Unwrapped.